All right, 2 Samuel chapter 10. 2 Samuel chapter 10. David has had some high moments and some low moments. In chapter 10, he's going to do fairly well. In chapter 11, he's going to fall off the cliff. King Nahash, if you remember in 1 Samuel chapter 11, when Saul is king, you meet this man, King Nahash of Ammon, and he was the one who Israel wanted to make a treaty with, and he said, on one condition, I'll gouge out the right eye of every one of you as a disgrace to all Israel. So King Nahash in 1 Samuel 11 is trying to fight against Israel. He says, I'll make a treaty with you, but I'm going to gouge out the right eye of everyone. And that's when Saul comes and defeats him, remember? But that's King Nahash. That's who he was. And he tried to make a treaty. He thought he could win. And he was threatening to gouge out the right eye of every one of Israel. They got scared, but the Spirit of God came upon Saul. And Saul ends up beating them. So you fast forward to chapter 10 of 2 Samuel. And it says, sometime after this, King Nahash of the Ammonites died. So that king that they had beaten, that king that Saul had defeated, that king that had wanted to gouge out the right eye of every Israelite, has passed away. And so David hears that he's passed away, and David responds. Now you would think that David was happy that he passed. You would think that that guy wasn't the type of guy that you would spend much time worrying about, especially given his history of coming against Israel. But what you'll find, look at what it says. After King Nahash of the Ammonites died, his son Hanun became king. And David said, I'm going to show loyalty to Hanun just as his father Nahash was always loyal to me. So something weird happened. I don't know we don't really know. So King Nahash had been this awful person to Israel. He got soundly defeated. So I don't know if Nahash just decided it wasn't worth fighting against God anymore, or Nahash and David both had a problem with Saul, and so Nahash was okay with David because having a common enemy kind of makes you better friends. But Nahash showed loyalty to David. Whether he was scared of David, I don't know what happened. I don't know what the deal was, but King Nahash and David were okay. Nahash was loyal to David. So he didn't cause David any trouble. He was loyal to David. And so when this king dies, David sends people to pay respect. His son is now king, and David says, I'm going to go and show loyalty. So David is really trying to do the right thing. How many times do you feel like you've done the right thing and it bites you? Sometimes we do the wrong thing and it bites us. But sometimes you legitimately try to help people. You think you know you're doing the right thing, and then bam. David is doing the right thing. David is showing courtesy. He says that Nahash has been loyal to me, and he's died, and I'm going to send my condolences. And it says, I'm going to show loyalty to his son Hanun, just as his father Nahash was always loyal to me. So David looks at his son and says, your dad was good to me, I'm going to be good to you. And David's a pretty good guy to have on your side, right? Because when you have David on your side, you really have God on your side. And he says, so David sent ambassadors to express sympathy to Hanun about his father's death. David doesn't go. But David sends ambassadors, people who represent him, to Hanun to show sympathy about his father's death. It's a cool moment. It's a great moment. David does the right thing. He sends in ambassadors, and they go and they show respect to Hanun and really to Nahash, who's a wild character back earlier. And then this word. The very next word of that is but. So the story is going this way. You think that David's done the right thing, he's done the nice thing, and then it says but. But when David's ambassadors arrived in the land of Ammon, the Ammonite commander said to Hanun, their master, and this is where it gets pear-shaped, and this is part of the lesson of tonight. Whose opinion matters when you're doing the right thing? That's it. That's it, right? You cannot control how people receive what you're doing. You have to do what God is telling you to do and let those chips fall where they may. If you start only doing things when people like tell you it's a good idea, or you don't think there's going to be much reverberation from that, basically what you have to do is what God is telling you to do, right? You have to do the right thing. And so David has done the right thing. David has sent ambassadors. He's showing loyalty. He's showing grace. He's showing mercy. David didn't have to send anybody. David could have just done nothing. But David sends ambassadors to this king. Now this is the king's son, Hanan, and he's just stepped into kingship. So maybe who knows, maybe he's scared. Maybe he doesn't know, he's not smart enough to handle it. But all of a sudden, and this is what's difficult, and you'll face this in your life, people will tell other people what your motives are. You'll do something and people will have an opinion on what your motives are. The truth is, only God really knows your motives. You sometimes don't even know that you're fully motivated the right way. But I think what's really disturbing is not only, and look, when people question your motives, then you just have to make sure you're right with God. Sometimes you do have the wrong motive. Sometimes people are to call you out on it, and when they do, you've got to be brave enough and bold enough to say you're right. But at the end of the day, when people do something, look, if it goes against the word of God, then that's a sin. But if they're doing something and then someone questions your motive, that can be hard, right? And what I think what the most damaging thing is, and maybe it's happened to you, I'm sure it has, is not, most of the time the people who question your motives, there's always the people that you always kind of struggle with. Like you can understand why they're questioning it because there's some kind of background to that. But what hurts more is that people just believe what they hear. So in other words, if someone comes and says, you know what Pat Taylor did? And they just believe it and say, well, that makes sense. What you want them to say is, that doesn't sound like the Pat I know. And what you want them at least to do is come and say, hey, Pat, I know you probably didn't do this, but this is what I heard. Is it true? So it's not just that people question your motives. It's that people who you're close to just accept it like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Well, hold on a minute. You should know me better than that. David has this reputation. David's a man after God's own heart. Okay, he's flawed. And in all, David doesn't have to do this. And he sends this man, these ambassadors, and the people in Hanan's ear just start to chirp. Probably because they had beef against David. Probably because they didn't like God. Probably because they were trying to usurp their authority. Who knows why? But you have to watch in your life that God is the one that has your ear and nothing else. Think about how many people and how many things try to get in your ear. Social media, TV, people. There is a lot of things vying for our attention. And really at the end of the day, why are you doing that? I'm doing that because God told me to do that. Whether you like it or not, whatever happens to me, I got to do what God's telling me to do. David sends, and it's not even a big deal. It shouldn't even be that big a deal. But Hanan's men start to say, look at what they say. Do you really think these men are coming here to honor your father? The truth to that is that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. They're coming here to honor his father. And the people say, oh, come on, David. Come on, Hanan, you really think that's what he's doing? And it starts to question the character of David. They start to say to him, isn't that the devil's ammo? Do you really think? Where have you heard that before? Did God really say? This is the devil. Do you really think? If Hanan accepts David grace and mercy, God's going to bless that. Hanan listens. He listens to his men. And by the way, you better be careful who you listen to. You better be careful who you're around. You better be careful what you believe and and look at what they say. David has sent them to spy out the city so that they can come in and conquer it. So they say to him, hold on, this is a trap. David is really spying on us and they want to come and conquer us. Well, the truth is, as we'll see, if David want to conquer it, guess what? He'll conquer it. One of the most important things you can understand from stories like this, when people accuse you of things, when people are at this game, when they're just talking, they often accuse you of doing things that they actually do. This is their way of doing stuff. This is what they would do. And so they start to say, he's spy under the cover of being nice. He's really here to spy out the city. And it's not true. David's done this nice thing. David's probably not even thinking about it. He sent his ambassadors. He's going about his business. All right. And then it says, do you really think these men are coming here to honor your father? No. David has sent them to spy out the city so that they can come and conquer it. Here we go. What should they do at that point? When emotions are high, when people are speaking to you, when you think you've been betrayed, when you think someone's after you, when you think like something's going awry, what should you do? Right. Count to 10, take a breath, and pray. Right? The worst thing to do in that is what? Mm-hmm. And what does Hanan do? How many times in your life has a fast reaction cost you? All right, Frank, do you want to give a testimony or? Immediately, Hanan gets ticked off. Hanan believes it. And so he takes David's ambassadors, shaves off half of each man's beard. This idea in the Israelite culture, old men wore full beards. It was a sign of maturity and authority. And so they suffered great indignity having and they looked foolish. When you start, they shaved half of it off. They're doing it to make a point. They're doing it to shame them. And now this might be the only time you ever hear this word in church. He shaved off half of each man's beard and cut off their robes at the buttocks and sent them back to David in shame. That's what he did. You imagine that, walking home, they've cut it so basically your buttocks just show. They're literally showing their rear end. This is what they did. It's right here. I'm not just saying it just to say it. It's right here. What'd you say? Yeah, a not very well-fitting hospital gown. Yeah, that's kind of a good idea, right? In a hospital gown, no one's like, hey, look at me, hey. You kind of put all the covers on you can and hope no one comes visit, right? But look at that quick reaction. He doesn't kill them. He doesn't hit them, but he makes them shamed. He shaves off half their beard, and he cut off their robes. And he sent them, and what does it say? He sent them back to David in what? Can you imagine walking home like that? And what had they done? Nothing. And by the way, they were sent. So even if David is spying on them, it's nothing to do with them. Look what happens. And this is David. This is the heart of David. Remember we said last week about Mephibosheth, and when David heard what had happened, he sent messengers to tell the men, stay at Jericho. This is the heart of David. David doesn't want them to come back into town looking like that. Not that David's embarrassed. David is upset. He's going to be upset because of what Hanan did. He flew off the handle, and Hanan, by the way, this is going to cost Hanan lots. And here's the bigger problem. Not only when you do the wrong thing does it cost you, guess what? It starts to leak into other people's lives. If Hanan just hurts Hanan, that's on Hanan. But when Hanan starts this, he starts bringing all of these people. We'll see thousands of families suffer because Hanan jumps the gun. Right now, Hanan wouldn't know God. He's just an Ammonite, so I get why he didn't pray and all that. But just being sent, just take your time. Let's make a proper decision. even logically, doing this to David's men is not a good idea. It's not a good idea. It's not a good military tactic. But you look at the grace of David. It's not that David's embarrassed about these guys. He tells them, stay at Jericho. Now, the clothes, they could be changed pretty quick. It's not going to take long, less than a day. You'd have a new clothes. You could walk into town not showing anything. But the beard's going to take a minute. The beard's going to take a minute to grow back. And so David tells them, stay in Jericho until you're good. He doesn't get upset at them. He doesn't say, why didn't you fight back? He takes grace on them and he says to them, guys, just hang out, let it all go past, and it'll be good. That's cool, isn't it? That's David's like warm, fuzzy side. Now, next week, he doesn't have a warm, fuzzy side. But this week, but this is, the more I study this, the more it's us, isn't it? Imagine if this week God characterized Wednesday through Wednesday. I mean, how many days would you be like, man, this guy's awesome? And on Friday, be like, I mean, this is our struggle, isn't it? Like, just when you think you got it, you don't. Look at what it says. Stay in Jericho until your beards grow out and come back, for they felt deep shame because of their appearance. They were shamed. They got beaten. All they did was follow the master. And by the way, that's exactly what happens to us. If you're going to obey the Lord, the world's going to try and shame you. And when you follow the Lord and the world shames you, what you do next means everything. And this is part of taking up your cross. You remember Jesus? They shamed him. They called him the devil. They pulled his beard. They lashed him. They spat on him. They did all of that. And we've got to be willing to take that ridicule. I keep telling you, the ridicule that Jesus took, he can't take anymore. He's gone. He's high and lofty. He's sitting at his throne. So the devil does it to us. And if you're not willing to take that shame, if you're not willing to get embarrassed by your workers because you talked about Jesus, if you're not willing to take whatever comes your way, then you're going to have some issues. You're not going to be as powerful as you could be. David's men stay, he says, they felt deep shame because of their appearance. Look at this. The king, and by the way, he's a new king, and he's only king because, the Ammonites, you can see this didn't go to a vote. Look at what it says. Somehow or another, they figure out that David not liked very much. There's no Twitter, there's no Facebook, there's no text messages. David, they find out, isn't very happy with. Well, that doesn't take a rocket science. Look at what it says. When the people of Ammon, the Ammonites, realized how seriously they had angered David. In other words, maybe they thought they could get away with it. He was not. They really angered David. They sent and hired 20,000 Aramean foot soldiers. See what happened? And in 1 Chronicles 19, they pay 75,000 pounds of silver. Hanan has done this rash thing. And by the way, what does Hanan get out of this? 2 minutes of thinking you're somebody? I mean, what did Hanan achieve? He made a point, kind of. He thought he was the man for a couple of minutes. Until David got angry. David hasn't done anything yet. An old boy starts to panic and regret. What could Hanan have done? Hold on, what could Hanan have done to solve this problem? What do you do next? If you really want peace, what do you do? There you go. What would David have done? I mean, he may have done something to him, but he would have forgiven him, right? Whatever was coming, look, when we read this story, you'll realize that whatever, sorry would have been better. Just apologize. We've all been there. How many times have you known to apologize, you haven't, and then you wished you had? I can't be the only husband that knows I should be saying sorry now, and I don't. No one else is going to admit to it. That's fantastic. I mean, there's times you even know, I should just stop this argument. I've told you about the time when we were going the wrong way, Tasha told me, and then I found out it wasn't. I kept driving and arguing. That's how stupid I am. Yeah. Not my greatest moment. Sometimes you just need to apologize, right? In fact, there was a guy in court that started cursing out the judge, and every time he cursed at him, he gave him 90 days. No, and he did it 7 times or something. Yeah. And he just kept getting more mad. He's like, I think it was 93. Every time he was cursing him, he said, that's 93. And he kept going, 93, 93, and 7 times. 500, 600 days, whatever. And 6 days later, old boy was back there. Guess what he was saying? Sorry, judge. And the judge made him serve the time he'd already served and gave him a suspended sentence, and he got out. He had a new lawyer, and they were like, your lawyer, I much prefer this lawyer, he said. But he had to go back and apologize. You imagine spending like 600 or 700 days in just to curse out a guy 5 times. I mean, who says that's worth it? I got it off my chest, right? I mean, this is stupid. But this is listen, it's kind of funny because all of us are that stupid. I mean, we not curse people, but you know when someone's like, oh, that's 90 days. Oh, yeah, well, it's crazy. So look what happens. Now, so you got the Ammonites, and now you've got the Arameans, the Syrians. Now, they drag them into it. By the way, if you start messing with someone, and they get angry, and the first thing you do is hire help, it means you're in a fight that you shouldn't have been in the first place, right? I mean, if you're the big boy on the block, why are you hiring help? David gets ticked off, and immediately, 75,000 pounds of silver. They hire 20,000 Aramean foot soldiers from the lands of Beth-rehob and Zobah, 1,000 from the king of Makkah, and 12,000 from the land of Tob. 33,000 people are now in a fight because one guy reacted. Think about that. You've paid all this money. 33,000 people are in a war now because 2 or 3 people yapped in a guy's ear and he said, I mean, it's wild, isn't it? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. 32,000. Can you imagine? Why are we fighting for you? Well, I shaved his beard and cut the robe. I mean, come on, man. Why did the Arameans go and fight? It's against God, and probably any time they can fight God, they're interested because that's kind of crazy they are. But they're getting paid, right? So they sent and hired. Verse 7, when David heard about this, he sent Joab. Do you remember Joab? So these characters that we're going to run into again, Joab and Abishai are brothers. They're key military commanders under King David. They're his nephews, remember? His sister Zeruiah, they're his nephews. They're her sons, Joab and Abishai. Joab is David's army commander, and he's like got this military power and ruthless action. Abishai is a warrior. You remember they killed and we've seen them be loyal to David, but they killed Abner, remember? And so that Joab is the military force behind David. And so when David heard about this, he sent Joab and all his warriors to fight them. So now you've got 32,000 Arameans coming. Now you've got David messing around with Joab and all his troops. And it says, when David heard about it, he sent Joab and all his warriors to fight them. Can you imagine really saying, how did this fight start? You ever notice that some of the worst fights in your life, you'd be embarrassed to say how they started? Honestly. Some of the worst rows, arguments you've had in your marriage, you would never tell anyone how they started. Because it just sounds so stupid and so puerile. Well, he said, you're joking, right? Look at what it says. Verse 8, the Ammonite troops came out. So you got the Ammonites and the Arameans. The Ammonites are obviously the king's men. You've got the Arameans who have been hired. The Ammonite troops came out and drew up their battle lines at the entrance of the city gate, while the Arameans from Zobah and Rehob and the men from Tob and Makkah positioned themselves to fight in the open fields. So the king's men, the Ammonites, are at the entrance of Rabbah, the city gates. And the Arameans, who are the ones that have been hired, the Ammonites are the ones that have been hired. They're at the entrance of the city gates. And the Ammonites are I'll get it. King Nahash of the Ammonites, so his men, the king's men, I was right the first time, are at the entrance of the city gates. And the Arameans who he's hired are at the front on the open fields. And look what happens. Look at what he says. When Joab saw that he would have to fight on both the front and the rear, he chose some of Israel's elite troops and placed them under his personal command to fight the Arameans in the field. So David sees the threat that's coming from the front and they're coming from the back. The Ammonites are at the back, the Arameans are at the front, and so there's at the front and at the back, they're trying to come in on Israel. And David, now this is crazy, David has elite men, troops placed under his command, and he wants to fight the Arameans. So these Arameans who have been hired now face Israel, the elite troops of Israel. Verse 10, he left the rest of the army under the command of his brother Abishai, who was to attack the Ammonites. So Joab is to fight the Arameans, and Abishai is to fight the Ammonites. And so the Ammonites, who are the king's men, Abishai is to fight him, and Joab's going to fight the Arameans who have been hired. So if they want to fight, David's going to fight, and he's going to take his men. And look what happens, and this is really crazy. And this is one of the only moments that Joab has this moment of like spiritual stuff. If the Arameans are too strong for me, come over and help me, Joab told his brother. So Joab says to Abishai, look, we're going to work this together. I'm fighting the Arameans, you're fighting the Ammonites. If they end up being too strong for me, come and help me. Come and help me. And if the Ammonites are too strong for you, I'll help you. All right, so two brothers are locked in. If they come and they're too strong, come get me. If they're too strong for you, I'll come get you. I'll come and help you. And then he says this wild thing in verse 12. Be courageous. Let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. Now that's nothing new. That's nothing really surprising. Be courageous. Joab tells his brother, be courageous. We're going to fight bravely for our people. We're going to fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. And then he says, what does he say? May the Lord's will be done. In other words, Joab in this really spiritual moment, and you won't find him in many, Joab in this spiritual moment, I don't think it's fatalistic like, well, if we die, we die. He's literally telling his brother, look, God's in control of this. God's going to take care of this. He looks at Abishai and he says, fight bravely. So there's a double kind of, look, you have to have courage. You're going to have to fight. Right? You're going to be in this war. You're going to be in this battle. But as you fight and as you're courageous and as you're trying to defend, God is going to take care of us. God is going to be over this. Abishai, it's not me and you. It's us and God. Does that mean you can sit there and not fight? No, they had to be courageous. They had to fight. But he said, hey, God's going to take care of us. Isn't that what you would do in a war? Like, let's fight, let's stand, let's be courageous. But remember, it's God. Really cool. Verse 13. When Joab and his troops attacked the Arameans, began to run away. Hold on, what? Do you see how stupid this is? You've just paid all this money. You've just brought in the cavalry. You've just hired 33,000 people, 20,000 foot soldiers, 1,000 more, and then 12,000 more. Imagine God watching this. Imagine angels saying, what's going to happen? Just watch. So they're courageous, they trust God, and the fight starts. And look what it says. Joab attacks the Arameans, and they just what? Do you see how God turns things around? The devil's trying to shame God's people, but now who's ashamed? They've tried to embarrass God. They've tried to take two people and cut their robe and shave their beard, and the devil laughs, and the devil thinks he's winning. And now the Arameans, they begin to run away. And look what happens. Remember, the Ammonites were putting Joab was putting his strength in who? In God. Who are the Ammonites putting their strength in? Themselves and the Arameans. Now think about imagine if you started a fight, hired at great cost 32,000 soldiers, and you watch, and they're running away. That's exactly what happened. They just started running away. This is God. Oh, you want to hire people to defeat us? Go ahead, hire them. And guess what? This is a picture of us, though. Anytime you put your hope and stock and anything else, guess what? God just makes a laughing stock of it. You can't come at me with that. And Joab doesn't even have to do anything. They start to attack, and the Arameans begin to run away. Look, Joab didn't know how it was going to go. He even tells his brother, if they get you, I'll come. If you get, he didn't know how this was going to go. It may have got tough at some point, right? But he had the faith and the tenacity to get in the fight. And sometimes if you'll just get in the fight, God will do something amazing. Look at what happens. So Joab attacks the Arameans. And when the Ammonites saw the Arameans run away, they ran away. Can you imagine watching this from heaven? God, what are you going to do? All these people are coming against your people. Just watch. Well, what's going to happen? Imagine if you're in a war and on the TV, they're like, what happened? Well, they just started running. What? Yeah, they just ran away. What do you mean? No, they just started running away. When Joab and his troops attacked, the Arameans began to run away. And when the Ammonites saw the Arameans running, they ran from Abishai and they retreated into the city. They went back. They retreated. They gave up. And after the battle was over, Joab returned to where? What do you think Joab's learned? You would think that was the end of it, right? You would think that was... Here's the problem with the devil. Here's the problem with the world. They never quit. Like the devil doesn't lose and then say, oh, you can resist him and watch him like he runs away sometimes, right? And that is the picture. When you get in a fight and you stand for God, you can make the devil run away. The problem is, he always comes back. Don't you wish you could defeat him once and that was it? Beat you, done. No. You can stand against the devil. You can resist him. You can watch him flee. But wouldn't you come back? He's got nothing to lose. He's already lost. The devil knows his fate. He just keeps going and he roars like a roaring lion, right? And see, this is the thing. He wants us to do the same thing. He wants us to get into battle and just run away. Run away from church, run away from prayer, run away from scripture, run away from whatever. He just wants us to be scared. He just wants us to be scared. And so the Arameans have run, the Ammonites have run, and Joab goes back to Jerusalem. Must be thinking, well, that was fairly easy. Imagine what he said to Abishai. Well, I guess I didn't need your help. I told you God had this. And look, but this we talked about last week in Psalm 2. Like, why do the nations rage? They think that the more people they have, the better strength they have. Like, if we just had more people, then we'll beat them. Hold on, look what happens. The Arameans realized that they were no match for Israel. So when they regrouped, they were joined by additional Aramean troops summoned by Hadadezer from the other side of the Euphrates River. Hold on. The reason we didn't win is because we didn't have enough people. We just need more people to run with us next time. I mean, this is nuts. And by the way, who is this? This is the Arameans. It's not even the Arameans' fight. You ever been stuck in a fight that wasn't yours to begin with? Yes. Like why am I fight? The guy that started it, he's over there, and I'm caught in the middle. Like, this isn't my fight. I was trying to help them out, and now I'm in it, and he's gone. They realized that they were no match for Israel. Hold on. That's not really true. It wasn't Israel they were no match for. Why was Israel strong? Yeah. And so all they have to do is acknowledge, and by the way, how many times in battles do people just run away? This isn't a normal thing. God shows who his people are. God shows who his power. All they have to do again is come back to God and say what? We shouldn't have fought you. We give. Nah. So now they summon more. And it says, these troops arrived at Halam under the command of Shobak, the commander of Hadadezer's forces. We just need more people. We got a better commander this time. Let's go. When David heard what was happening, he mobilized all Israel. All right, so we've gone from now all Israel is involved in this. This is crazy. How many people are involved in this fight because some dude just did the stupid thing quick? Look what happens. But it's kind of comical until it's not. Look what happens. All of Israel crossed the Jordan River and led the army to Halam. So David crosses. Now David is leading the army. Remember what happened? He sent the ambassadors, and now David himself is leading the army. David's like, enough of this. King David is now leading his army. And by the way, when he's leading his army, how scared is he? Imagine the report comes back. What happened last time? Oh, they ran. Okay. What happens? Look at verse 18. What happens? They fled. The Arameans fled from the Israelites. But do you see, look, this gets really serious. Think about this. This time David's forces killed 700 charioteers and 40,000 foot soldiers. Hold on. Yeah, including the commander. The new commander that was going to be. So 40,700 people died. For what? For what? How do you sit at a funeral and be like, this was worth it? They get hired in a fight that isn't theirs, and 40,700 men die because Hanan is nuts. Because Hanan overreacted and listened to wrong advice and did the stupid thing of cutting the robe and shaving the beard, and then hiring, like David, I don't know that David was going to do that much, but when they start hiring people, when the old boy's hiring 32,000 or 33,000 people, you got to do something, right? David leads the army, and he starts to kill people. And then, after all of this, I mean, you imagine the families of these people. How do you reconcile that in your mind? Now, what was meant to happen? When you lose your husband like this, what was the one realization you had to come to? If you've lost your husband like this, what kind of fight did he get in? Well, they were hired to help beat Israel. Well, what happened? Well, he got killed. What happened in the first time? They ran away. Why did God allow them to die? What is God telling the people of Ammon and Aramea? What is he telling them? You have to fear who? When your husband dies in this battle, what you have to realize above all else is there's only one God, there's only one king, and you don't mess with Israel because Israel is God's. And if you're going to mess with Israel, when David, in this history, you're going to get killed. See, all of a sudden, if this battle ends up leading you to God, then you can see the fruit of it, right? But these are God's enemies. These are people who don't easily turn. They don't care. So at this point, what have you gained from any of this? And in fact, what happens is, look at what happens. The commander of the army dies. Verse 19, when all the kings allied with Hadadezer saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they surrendered to Israel and became their subjects. So not only did David kill them, but all the kings that had come against God, guess what? Guess who's their king now? Guess who? Now David has them. Now David has just grown stronger, exponentially stronger. Now he controls more than he did before. You see how God turns things around? David did the right thing. He acted in grace and mercy. He did everything right. Then it caused him. But God saw, God knew, God responded, God reacted. And now it says, and they became their subjects. And after that, the Arameans were afraid to help the Ammonites. Would you get back in that fight? The Arameans have died because the Ammonites came up with this crazy idea. And God has just blessed David and put all these people under. And David's kingdom just keeps going what? Bigger and bigger and bigger. And David is victorious. And David is stepping with God. And God's hand is all over him. And God's power is all over him. And they're winning. And Israel is on a high. And you're singing hallelujah. And life must have been good. And guess what happens next? See, I'm telling you, this is our problem. David sends Joab and his army to fight the Ammonites, to lay siege of the city that they were fighting at. But David stays what? David stays behind. And one afternoon, he walks out, sees Bathsheba, and Houston, we have a problem. But look, after this study, are you shocked that David falls with Bathsheba? You see what's wild? What's wild is Hanan had a problem. Hanan responded to sin how quickly? And David, the king of Israel, responds to sin how quickly? Hanan got prideful and thought, oh, I'm not having this. He listened to some stupid advice and responded. David sees Bathsheba naked, couldn't handle it because of his past. Once you start messing with that stuff, I mean, how's he going to escape that? He's already opened Pandora's box. His sexual life has been rampant with sin. And now he sees Bathsheba. And as quickly as Hanan reacted, David reacted. Now, when David sees her and he starts having thoughts, how do you get out of that? How do you get out of that? I mean, look, every man has struggled with lust. How do you get out of it? Well, how did we say to Hanan? What was Hanan meant to do? He's to take 10 seconds and take a breath and what? That's exactly what you have to do. He should have walked back inside and said, Lord, I need your help. Instead, what does he do? Bring her. And all of a sudden, and we know the story, and we'll get into it next week, all of a sudden this guy, who's this king of Israel, who God is blessing, who's God's hand on, starts to become this person who arranges for murder. And all of a sudden, and by the way, Hanan cost the lives of all of these people. You know what David's going to do? He's going to cost him the life of his own son. And even in that, God is going to be gracious because he says, Nathan tells him, look, you royally messed this up. Your son's going to die, but you aren't. Like God could take you out, but he's made promises and he's not going to kill you.
That's almost worse.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Maybe that's a great point. Imagine, it would be one thing to die for your own sins. Imagine your kid dying for your sin. And all of a sudden, see, but do you see how quick it is? This is why you talk about being armored up and prayed up and all that. You know how quickly you can ruin your life? Look, I would venture to say that no one's as strong as King David in here. And he slipped, and he fell, and he ruined it that quick. So whether it's anger, whether it's people talking in your ear, whether it's lust, whatever it is, we're 1 second away from messing the whole thing up. But here's what we got to understand. When you start to mess up, there's a quick way out. You have to repent and you have to say sorry. And you have to do it quick. Because the longer you hold that out, guess what's going to happen? Now, look, maybe none of you have ever done this. We've probably all been on a diet at one point. It's the same kind of thinking of, I'm on a diet and I ruined it, so I might as well just ruin it some more. I mean, I busted out, so 5 donuts, and then the next day, well, I busted it yesterday, and you just keep going on this cycle until you realize, I got to stop. Now, maybe this is personal testimony, maybe it's not, you can figure that out. But we think that, right? We think like, well, I already busted it, so who cares? And it's kind of like, well, I've already sinned now, and I'm already in trouble, so I might as well just get my money's worth, right? But do you see? But you know what's kind of worse? Hanan kind of like reacts spontaneously, right? We don't know, but how long did David have to think about this? Think about that. Well, but it wasn't a second. It wasn't. Bathsheba wasn't in front of him. He didn't walk in on her and be like right there. He had to call her over. There was more. I don't know how long it was. But what do you think the Spirit of God was saying to David? And that's let's be honest. Have you ever done something and looked back and said, Lord, I know you were telling me, and I know you were giving me a way out, and I'm just a lunatic? The Spirit of God, you know sometimes things happen to stop you doing what you're about to do? A phone call, a visit. I mean, imagine if you were just about to do something you shouldn't and your pastor rings your doorbell like, ah! Maybe you don't care. Yeah, so when you don't answer your door, that's what I'm going to assume happens, so answer your door. No, but look, we'll talk about this next week, but he sent someone to find out who she was, and then he sent messages to go get her, so it's not 5 minutes. He had enough time to, and by the way, that lustful thought should just come and then what? Mm-hmm. But there's something in David's mind, heart, and spirit that keeps that thing burning and burning and burning until it's gone. We'll read later about the rape of Tamar, and it's not, and sin and lust and just, it's. But I think what we have to realize is you can ask for forgiveness straight away. You can ask for, and don't wait till the whole thing's blown up. Like, do it as soon as you can. But what I think, and we'll talk about this next week, but one of the biggest lessons for this, for me, is this has been coming for ages. Like, as you studied the book of Samuel, nobody's surprised that David fell like this. Because those signs, those seeds. So what I'm telling you is, watch out, because you think you're getting away with something sometimes. Think about how much, like for these people that really mess up, how many signs has there been? How much stuff have they been watching? How much, like these people who plan out murder, like they've had all of this stuff, they've thought about it. That's why premeditated is worse than, but when you put garbage in your mind, guess what's coming out? So if you go back to like people who mess up in certain ways, there's going to be a trail of that's where it started. That bad thought, that bad action, that bad. And the problem is, you see, murder didn't come out of David's heart for how long? For a long time. But man, that seed's been in there. That seed of, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, and what's really difficult too is, in the Christian life, you know when you're susceptible? How often do you think you're susceptible? Well, it's even more than a lot. All the time. And you know how I know that? When David is in this moment, he's politically strong. He's got no problems. He's winning wars. He's got everything. He's got the palace. He's got everything. He's got everything. And just when it feels like, man, me and you, God, we're flying high, guess what? You're susceptible. Okay, now so go the other way. So when everything is good and life is fine, we're susceptible, right? Okay, so then flip it. Life stinks. Life is hard. I've got no money. I've got no friends. How susceptible are you then? So the point is, every single day, whether life is fantastic or whether it stinks, whether you're close to God or whether you feel far away from Him, guess what? Every single day, you're not safe. That's why you need the Spirit. That's why we need to pray. That's why we need the fear of the Lord. That's why leadership or any position is difficult, because when, like even for a pastor, when church is bad, you're susceptible to depression, discouragement, defeat, all kinds of stuff. And when it's flying high, oh man, I'm good, it's good, I don't have to do anything. And bam. Yeah, and the devil, and here, I'll finish here and I'll let Dwayne come and do the business and we'll pray. And I've told you this before, but this is really, really interesting. And I think this will really help. I was talking to my mom about this a while ago. Only God is all-knowing, all-seeing, and all-powerful, right? Sometimes I think we give way too much credit to the devil and his power. But here's the truth of it. I really believe this. How does the devil know what to get you with? Because the same trap won't work for everybody. Your trap might not be my trap. Now, we might be. But have you ever looked at someone and thought, how in God's green earth can that be your thing? Like, what are you doing? Like there was a guy in Texas that got arrested, put in jail. He stole like 38 cents worth of something or something stupid from a grocery store. It's like, okay, if you're going to go to jail, 38 cents, come on, man. My point is, how does the devil know? And by the way, how did the devil know that David had problems with women? He watches. So what the devil does is he throws something at you, and he just waits. He'll throw alcohol, he'll throw sex, he'll throw drugs, he'll throw gluttony, he'll throw pride, he'll throw, you name it, and he'll watch. And if you don't take it, he either comes back with it to see if you'll take it, and there's some things in your life you've never taken. That trap, you've never fallen for a certain trap that the devil, so he just like, the problem is he's like, man, this guy's no. He knows that we all have what? Something. And so then he throws something else. It's like fishing. You just keep casting, and sometime you are going to what? And whatever you bite on, now the devil knows, that got him. And this sexual stuff with David, that'll get him. That'll get him. That'll get him. Because he's already... So if we have this long history of stuff, the devil's just going to be like, that'll get him. And sometimes you ever had something that kept getting you? And that's where you got to be smart enough to say, God, I really need your help. I need your forgiveness. That's what's getting me. And I can't handle it. It's really, really kind of interesting. But he just throws it. He just throws it. And we got to be smart enough to be like, I'm not doing that again. Problem is, until you die, he's going to be throwing stuff at you. I used to think, how could David ever do such a thing? But now that I've studied all this, it's no surprise whatsoever. Does anyone have any questions?